Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining today. Wanted to seek your good wishes and your blessings so that we can complete the 7th canto today. So today is the last chapter, 15th chapter. An extraordinary canto, extraordinary scripture. So this is 17th verse of this 15th chapter. So let's recite this. Sada santushta manasa sarva shiva maya disha sarkara kantaka dibyo yatho panad pada shivam. Kamakshi, would you like to read? Or Aruna, would you like to read?
Sorry, I'll read from my husband's phone, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you want to read, Aruna? Translation. For a person who has suitable shoes on his feet, there is no danger even when he walks on pebbles or thorns. For him, everything is auspicious. Similarly, for one who is always self-satisfied, there is no distress. Indeed, he feels happiness everywhere. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So, this chapter is entitled Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. So, it's the last of the six chapters, I think, about philosophy, which Narad Muni has been talking to Yudhishthira Maharaj about. Because Narad Muni was wondering, Yudhishthira Maharaj was wondering, how can the Lord be so merciful that even demons can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Anyway, so this is quite a long chapter. I think it was about 80 verses. So we'll go through it. We've got a little bit of detail on it, but it is an overview. So there are various types of Brahmins. So those who are in the Grihastha life, household life, the Karma Nishtas, they're very attached to fruitive activities. And we often do come across people like this who are very much into the ritualistic ceremonies that are offered in the Vedas as part of a business transaction with the Lord. I will do this service for you, and you will give me this in return. That's karma nishta. They're very attached to fruitive activities. Then there's the vanaprasthas, the taponishta. They're attached to austerities and penances, like we were reading yesterday, how the vanaprasthas live their life, or the ideal vanaprastha, in the forest, not even in the cave, and eating not even grains, just fruits naturally ripened. Then there's the brahmacharis, the swadhyaya nishta. They study the Vedic literatures. And then finally, the Jnana Nishta, the sannyasis. Very few of these who cultivate knowledge and generally practice bhakti yoga. Of the four, the latter is superior to the former in this list. So as we go, the most superior of them all is the sannyasi, who is engaged in bhakti yoga, fixed in his Krishna consciousness. One who desires liberation. Liberation means getting out of this world of birth and death, and going to the spiritual world. One who desires liberation should give charity to Brahmins who adhere to the Jnana Nishta, the sannyasis. During the period for offering oblations to the demigods, one should invite only 2 Brahmins. So this is just a practical advice that Narad Muni is giving. While offering oblations to the forefathers, one may invite 3 Brahmins. In either case, only 1 Brahmin will suffice. Even though one is very opulent, one may be very wealthy, but one should not endeavor to invite more Brahmins or make various expensive arrangements on those occasions, as there will be inevitably some discrepancies. So this is Narad Muni being very practical. Just invite one Brahmin and feed him well, treat him with great respect, offer charity to him. And that is sufficient. That is sufficient for making advancement in spiritual life. One should offer food cooked in ghee to the deity, then offer that same food as Mahaprasad to the Vaishnav, to the devotee. Vaishnav means one who worships Lord Vishnu. One should not kill animals who become afraid in the name of sacrifice. It says in one of the verses that when the animal is going to be sacrificed, he becomes frightened. So why would we want to cause any living entity to be frightened, especially in the name of sacrifice, in the name of religious principles, doing a religious activity? It just contradicts. It's very contradictory. We want to kill this animal who's scared to please the Lord, and the Lord will become pleased. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So the next few verses, persons who want to advance in superior religion are advanced to give up all envy of other living entities, whether in relation to the body, the words, or mind. One who is actually aware of dharma is not cruel. So this is the point, cruelty. Can't be cruel. And generally, animals are, people eat them. It's described in one of the scriptures, out of envy, because they're envious. They're envious of other living beings, so they eat them. It's ridiculous. Persons advanced in knowledge are intelligent in regards to sacrifice. They're actually aware of religious principles. Right? They're free from material desires, so they may perform some sacrifice, some ritual even, but they don't want anything back in return. They just want to please the Supreme Lord. In control of the self, in the fire of spiritual knowledge, or knowledge of the Absolute. So they're aware of the Absolute Truth. They're aware of who they are in relation to the Absolute Truth. There are 5 branches of a religion, of irreligion, sorry, not a religion, irreligion. So these are against religion. Vidharma, so religious principles that obstruct one from following his own religion. So this is a kind of irreligion where you're stopped from following your own religion. Paradharma, these are religious principles introduced by somebody or for which one is unfit. So many times we see people concoct so many different religions. And I won't name any, but concocted religions are irreligious. It's concocted by man to fulfill his own purpose. It's not something that's been laid out through the Vedic literatures or through the Lord or through his bona fide devotees. Abhyas dharma, that means whimsical worship of demigods according to one's imagination. I should worship him like this. No basis in scripture, no authority behind the worship. We're just worshiping according to our own mental capacity. There is space for that, but that is called spontaneous bhakti. But when one is worshipping devatas, for example, you don't do that according to your own whimsical thinking. It's prescribed in the scriptures. And in any case, the worship of demigods is really not recommended, especially if we read the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says that one who worships the demigods, they go to the demigods, and the fruits of the demigods are temporary and limited. Whereas one who worships the Lord, Supreme Lord Krishna, ultimately will go to him in the spiritual kingdom, from which nobody returns. Upadharma, due to pride, manufactured religion which is against Vedic principles. So there are many religions which are totally against Vedic principles, that they're regarded to be Upadharma. Chaladharma, misinterpreting the scriptures by word jugglery. So we become very intelligent with our mental capacity, and we use that capacity in a wrong way by misinterpreting what is actually written in the Vedas or the scriptures. So one who is aware of real religion, religious life, must abandon these 5 as irreligious. So this is the advice given in this section of this chapter. How to be self-satisfied. One should not endeavor to improve his economic condition just to maintain his body and soul together. Why? Because through the law of karma, whatever we are due, it's going to come anyway. So if we are overly anxious of improving our economic condition, we may be just wasting our time, wasting our effort, which could be used in a more constructive way of becoming self-realized. Yes, Riansh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji,
Welcome.
sorry, I mistakenly
No,
raised the
that's
hand.
okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. Thank you for coming. One who is content and satisfied, so that means not striving for livelihood, and he links his activity with the Supreme Lord. He enjoys transcendental happiness, even without endeavoring. That requires, of course, some faith that the Lord is there, the Lord will protect me. For one who is always self-satisfied, there is no distress. Indeed, he feels happiness everywhere. There is no danger if one walks on stones and pebbles, if one has suitable shoes. So that was the verse that we read. And the point is, if one is self-situated, then he's got the proper shoes to live in this world. Because in this world, there's lots of pain and difficulties. But if he's self-situated, then he will not be under any distress. A greedy and lusty person who is not self-situated, however, loses everything, even though he wanders in all directions, desiring to seek wealth. So, the devotee is always satisfied as he feels the presence of the Super Soul within his heart and thinks of him constantly. A devotee is never driven by dictations of the tongue and genitals, and thus he is never victimized by the laws of material nature. So this is a really interesting point. Conquering obstacles. By making plans with determination, one can conquer anarthas as follows. So anarthas, what are they? They are obstacles on our spiritual path. So this is really invaluable instructions that Narad Muni is giving now to Yudhishthir. By making plans with determination, one can overcome or these obstacles, right? So lusty desires, they are huge obstacles on our spiritual path. So how do we avoid lusty desires? Is by being determined not to have sex. Anger, by giving up envy. So similar, like a little bit like, anger is given up by giving up envy. Greed, by discussing the disadvantages of accumulating wealth. So lust, anger, greed, these 3 are the gates that lead to hell. This is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. These are the principal things that keep us in this world again and again and again. So this is quite practical in terms of by Narad Muni's instructions to Yudhishthir. If we discuss the disadvantages of accumulating wealth, we'll understand eventually that actually wealth is not going to be the cause of my happiness. Then fear, another anartha. By discussing the truth that suffering is due to our own karma. So why do we suffer? We take responsibility. We're suffering because we've done something in the past to deserve this suffering. And that's why the suffering is there. No point pointing fingers that it's because of this person that I'm suffering or that person because I'm suffering. If we just take responsibility that actually it's because of my own doing that I'm suffering, it's much easier to deal with it. And that will also get rid of the fear, because we will understand, actually, whatever's happening to me is because of my own self. And I also have the opportunity to rectify it. Lamentation and illusion. By discussing spiritual matters, especially the distinction between the matter and soul, material body and Atma. If we manage to understand that we are the spirit soul, different from the body, then there won't be so much lamentation, because we'll understand we are eternal beings, and this body is very temporary, and anything happening to the body is not necessarily, should not affect the soul. Pride. How do we get rid of pride? By serving a great devotee. That's a good way to get rid of pride. Why? Because the devotee will destroy our pride by his words, his chastisement, his actions. Obstacles on the path of mystic yoga, by keeping silent. What does that mean? So by keeping silent, a lot of people keep silent, maunrat, but when they open their mouth, a whole lot of rubbish comes out. So it's better they kept silent. If one talks about bhakti yoga, then that is actually keeping silent. Bhakti yoga means we're discussing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when we discuss spiritual matters, that discussion is not within this material world. That's beyond this world. And that is the real silence. So we try to avoid any other yoga. We try to stick to this topmost yoga, bhakti yoga, which includes all the other yogas. Envy. How do we stop being envy? By stopping sense gratification. Envy means we look at somebody else's neighbor's car and we want better than his car. And the whole basis of wanting better is to enjoy our senses. So if we can stop thinking about enjoying our senses, then envy will automatically stop. Suffering from others by good behavior and being kind to them. Suffering due to providence by meditation in trance. Providence means rainfall, snow, whatever it is. If we simply become fixed and peaceful, then we would not be affected by the sufferings due to providence. Sufferings due to the body and the mind. By practicing Hatha Yoga, pranayam, one should do. So pranayam is the breathing exercises. And just a quick plug, if devotees like to do this, they can learn through Kamakshi, who teaches every Sunday morning at 8:30, pranayam. And chair yoga is very useful. Sleep ignorance by developing the mode of goodness, especially in regard to eating. So our biggest flaw usually is we eat too much, and we eat too much of the wrong things. So if we control our diet, then our sleep will be automatically controlled. Passion and ignorance, we can control by developing the mode of goodness. And the mode of goodness, we even have to transcend that. And the only way to do that is Shuddha Sattva, by becoming detached. Shuddha Sattva means the pure mode of goodness, which is being attached to the Supreme Lord, attached to Krishna. That will take us even beyond the ordinary mode of goodness. Mode of goodness is good because it'll make us peaceful, happy. But the problem with the mode of goodness, material mode of goodness, is that we become attached to that sense of peace and happiness. And that still keeps us in this world because we haven't become attached to the Supreme Lord. What the mode of pure goodness does is makes us attached to the Supreme Lord. So all this can be automatically done if one engages in the service of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. In this way, one can conquer the influence of the modes of material nature. So all of these are difficult to control one by one or all together in one go. But if one engages in the service of the Guru and the devotees with faith and devotion, then this can be also overcome automatically. Worshipping the Supreme Lord. The spiritual master is considered directly the Lord because he gives transcendental knowledge. This is sometimes a little hard to understand. How can the Guru be equal to the Lord? The explanation is here. The Supreme Lord gives real knowledge to the entire world. And the spiritual master, as his representative, carries that message throughout the world. Therefore, in the absolute platform, there is no difference between them. So the Guru is a servant of the Supreme Lord. He's a devotee. But because he's carrying the message of the Supreme Lord, he's regarded as equal to the Supreme Lord. But actually, he's a devotee. The disciple will think of the spiritual master as good as the Supreme Lord. Shakshat Darit Vena Samasta Sasteya. It's one of the songs that we sing every morning. The Supreme Lord Krishna is the master of all other living entities and of material nature. Ritualistic activities, austerities, and yoga are all useless without coming to the point of meditation on Lord Krishna. So ultimately, any austerity that we do, any yoga, any activities that we do, they should ultimately point to Krishna. If we can get that bit right, then everything we do will be very successful. But if we do all of these things, ritualistic activity, austerity, and miss Krishna, then it might be a waste of time. And when we say Krishna, that includes Ram, that includes Vishnu, all the Vishnu tattvas. But if we focus on our activities, austerity, and yoga, and we point at the devatas, they're still in this material world and will still remain in this material world. We won't transcend this world. So this is the point. Astanga Yoga. To practice Astanga Yoga, one must go to a secluded sacred place and chant the Vedic pranam. Om. There's no difference between Hare Krishna Mahamantra and Omkar because both of them are sound representations of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. So this is in the Bhagavad Gita explained. However, the Mahamantra may be chanted without consideration of the place, time, or sitting arrangements. This is the advantage of the Mahamantra. There's no rules, there's no regulations. You can chant it anywhere, anytime, and the benefit is the same. With half-closed eyes, staring at the tip of the nose, he must practice breathing exercises, bringing back the mind from thoughts of sense gratification. By regular practice in a short time, the devotee's heart becomes fixed and free from disturbance. With pure consciousness, one becomes peaceful and situated in eternal blissful life. So moving on, fall down from one ashram. The following would be considered fallen. One who accepts sannyas, that means they have taken to the renounced order of life, they've given up family life, but then they return again to family life. That's regarded as shameful. A grihastha, a family person who gives up the regulative principles, that's not good. A brahmachari who breaks his vows, and a vanaprastha who lives in the village, these are all considered to be fallen from the varnashram system. Such pretenders should be rejected or compassionately taught so that they can resume their original position. And this was the mood of Prabhupada. If somebody took sannyas and then they fell from that lofty position, Prabhupada would encourage them, okay, get married, but continue with your bhakti. Sword of knowledge. This is really powerful. The body is compared to a chariot, and the living entity is the owner of the chariot. So this we've seen in the Bhagavad Gita, where the passenger is the soul, and in this chariot, and then the driver is intelligence, the reins are the mind, and the horses are the senses. So very similar.
the horses are the senses, the roads are the mind, the charioteer is intelligence, the means one who sits in the chariot is the soul, and the chariot is the body.
Fantastic. Yes, very good. Well done. Well done. And those, what are the horses?
Eyes, nose, ears, tongues.
Yes, that's the sense objects. That's what the body or we try to satisfy. Very good. So that's very good. There, what you just said, you're absolutely spot on. And then this Bhagavatam gives a lot more detail. Narad Muni says the spokes of the wheel, 10 spokes, are the 10 life heirs. The wheels, religion and irreligion, can take you in one direction or the other. The passenger, you've already said, the soul. The bow, Pranav Omkar, that's the bow is what the passenger will have. And that's the Omkar, which we can use to get from the Guru in order to shoot the arrow. And we are the arrow, the pure soul. What's the target? Of course, we're not going to shoot Krishna, but we want to shoot ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna. The target is the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, who is the goal of life. The enemies to be conquered, to progress towards the target, these are all different things that we have problems with. Attachment, greed, lamentation, illusion, fear, madness, false prestige, envy, bewilderment, influenced by the free modes of material nature. Then there's the swords to destroy the enemies. And what's the sword? Knowledge. And Krishna says that at the end of 5th chapter as well, 529. By the sword of knowledge, one can become detached from this world. Knowledge sharpened by service to Guru and Parampara and the Lord's mercy. Thus, one attains spiritual bliss and gives up material body. Yes, Nandivan.
Can you explain, Prabhuji, what is the seat of the charioteer, which is the consciousness?
That's the soul.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally the charioteer is the...
Yeah. It's the same as the passenger.
Yeah, okay.
The seat of the chariot and its passenger is
Essence
non-different. Because the symptom of the soul is consciousness.
Yes, that's what I thought, yeah.
Good, good. Thank you for asking. The wrong path of the chariot may take the wrong path, not taking shelter of Achyuta and Baladev. The soul comes to the path of sense enjoyment in this material world. The dark well, because the chariot may come across a dark well, that's the samsara. That's what we're living in, thrown into material existence. And the plunderers, that's the attraction and repulsion to sense objects. So Narad Muni has given a lot of detail and worth studying this. We're just going to do an overview, but worth studying this. Okay. Krishna gives his word of knowledge and Balaram gives strength to hold the sword. By following the instructions of the spiritual master, one can sharpen the sword of knowledge. As an arrow is aimed with a bow and shot at a target, the soul is shot at the Lord by uttering Om. So if you remember, the bow was the Om and the arrow was the pure soul. But does it mean that the Lord is the enemy? No. It means Lord Vishnu is the goal of one's life. And a devotee takes the arrow of his purified life, and with the bow, the transcendental chant, he throws himself towards the Supreme Lord. It is like the devotee attains the Lord by the strength of their bhakti. Okay, Narad Muni also briefly explains the two types of activities. There's the path of pravritti, where one makes advancement within material life, so become from lower to higher status, but stays in this material world. And there's the path of nivritti, where one becomes fit for eternal blissful life by becoming detached to this material world and attached to the Supreme Lord. If enjoyment in this world is a wrong path that binds one to material existence, why is it prescribed in the scriptures? So different prescriptions are given according to one's disease. So if one is in the mode of ignorance, then the scriptures will allow one to rise, even within this world, to the mode of passion or goodness. So it will slowly, 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 slowly assist you in becoming more and more God conscious. So that's the point. Why do the scriptures prescribe enjoyment even in the scriptures? Why? Because to elevate this person from wherever they are to the next level. If one does not take shelter of Achyuta and Baladev, the horses, the senses that is, and the intelligence, the driver, inattentively bring the body, which acts as a chariot, to the same path of same sense gratification. And everyone is thrown into this blind, dark valley of material existence. That's pravritti activities involving performing ritualistic sacrifices to raise oneself from the lower to the higher condition of materialistic life, wherein one inevitably suffers. So this is just improving our time in the jail. So from solitary confinement, we go to or open prison, for example. You're still in prison. This is the path of pratiyana, attaining the heavens. But after the good karma is exhausted, the jiva descends again to earth to become. So this is the descent of the jiva. He attains heaven because of his good karma. But when his good karma is finished and he can't stay in heaven anymore, he falls as raindrops and becomes a herb, creeper, vegetables, or food grain, and then is eaten by different living entities and turned into semen, which is injected into the female bodies. This is how one takes birth again and again. So this is quite interesting. Narad Muni is actually describing the process, how one falls from this heavenly planets and again attains a human birth. Generally what will happen is the raindrops will take shelter, the soul will go through the raindrops into the grains, into the semen of the man, into the womb of the woman, and be born as a human being. That's generally what happens when one falls from heaven. Then the Nivritti Marg. By Nivritti activities, one is purified. What are these activities? They're God-conscious activities. We're trying to read the Vedas, understand the Vedas, chant the holy names, take prasad, associate with the devotees, and become fit to enjoy eternal blissful life. After residing on Brahmlok for millions of years, one attains the subtle state, then eventually becomes transcendental, i.e. goes back to the spiritual world. This is the path of Devyana. Even though situated in a material body, one who is fully aware of the paths known as Prithyana or Devyana, and who thus opens his eyes in terms of Vedic knowledge, is never bewildered in this world. So we know these two paths, and really, we don't want to take either path because we want to stick to Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga, the idea is we don't even worry about Brahmlok. We try to go straight from this world into the spiritual world. Okay. The Supreme Lord, who is the Supreme Truth, exists as knowledge and the object of knowledge. Many people try to claim that this world is false. You know? But that's not right. This world is real. Just like one may consider the reflection of the sun from a mirror to be false. Right? It looks false, yes. But it's still, that reflection has a factual existence because of the sun. Without the sunlight, the reflection would be impossible. So those who believe that this world is false, they try to claim that they're God. Effectively, they're known as impersonalists. They try to prove that the variety that we see in this world is false because they believe in oneness with the God. So they want to prove that everything is false. And what they argue is this: the rope is seen to be a snake, so it's false. But the Vaishnavas, what they say, although the idea that the rope is a snake is false, that's correct. The rope is not a snake. But the snake is not false. One has experience of a snake in reality. And therefore he knows that although the rope is not the snake, that's false, but there is snake in reality. So actually, to prove by speculative knowledge that there is no reality in this world would be extremely difficult. So this is a lot of philosophy that we're going through in this chapter. So I do apologize, we're going through a little quick because it's just a quick overview, but there's a lot in this chapter. It's worth reading this chapter again and again to understand some of this deep philosophy. While dreaming, one creates a separation between the existence called wakefulness and sleep. It is in such a state of mind that the regulative principles of the scriptures, consisting of injunctions and prohibitions, are recommended. So this is the time when we're in between wakefulness and sleep. Generally, that's our condition. We are either awake or asleep, or in between the two, in dreaming state perhaps even. So that's why the regulative principles of scriptures are there, so that they can assist us. The injunctions and prohibitions are recommended. When one attains self-realization, he gives up the three states of wakefulness, dreaming, and sleep. Everything for Krishna. When one dedicates all activities of body, mind, and words to Lord Krishna's service, it is called Kriya Dvaita, oneness of activities. When the interest of oneself, one's family, and all living entities is one, it is called Dravya Dvaita, openness of interest. One should perform our duties according to these instructions of Varnashram, and one can attain Krishna even whilst living at home. So this is why Varnashram is very important, because we can continue to live in this Varnashram system. Varna are the four categories of social systems, which is Brahman, Vaishya, Shudra, and Kshatriya. And ashram is the brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. So even within this system, one can slowly, gradually develop our Krishna consciousness, even whilst living at home. Don't have to leave home to go to the forest to attain the Lord. By serving the lotus feet of Krishna, the Pandavas defeated the greatest dangers. The Pandavas are an example of how to live at home, in their palace, in security and safety by the grace of Krishna. So then Narad Muni gives a little example about himself, how, what happened to him. Long ago, Narad Muni was a Gandharva known as Upabhalhana. Because Upabhalhana was extremely attractive, all the women followed him. Once the Gandharvas and Apsaras were invited to a festival to praise the Lord, Upabhalhana glorified the Devatas in an intoxicated way, instead of glorifying Lord Vishnu. And as a result, he transgressed etiquette, and he was cursed by the Prajapatis to become a Shudra. So Narad Muni was born as a son of a maidservant, as we know. But he served the Vaishnavas in that birth. And he served them so well that he was very fortunate to take birth as a son of Lord Brahma, as Narad Muni. So the final bit now. So the reason why Narad Muni gave that example was to show that one may be a Shudra or Brahman or any category of life, but one can attain the Supreme Lord, like he did. By chanting the holy name, even Grihasthas can gain the same result attained by sannyasis. The Pandavas are so fortunate in this world that many, many great saints visited their home because Lord Krishna was living there like their brother. He acted as their best well-wisher, their friend, their cousin, their heart and soul, worshipable director and spiritual master. After instructing Yudhishthir, Narad prays for Lord Krishna's blessings so that he will be pleased and that everyone become perfect in God consciousness and go back to Krishna. And then Shukadev Goswami finishes off. After hearing these narrations from Narad, Maharaj Yudhishthir felt great pleasure in himself, within his heart, and he worshipped Krishna to his heart's content. Narad bade them for farewell and departed. And then Sukadev Goswami explains that, I have told you about the lineage of Daksha. What else do you want to know? This is the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Ki Jai. So, Hare Krishna. Any questions, any comments?
Lot to take in this chapter, isn't it, Prabhuji?
This chapter's, yeah.
In chapter 15, lot of information there. We were
Yeah.
asking about Narad Muni, who in his past life. Now we have come to know at least good information for me.
Yes. I think also we were asking about Prahlad Maharaj. And Prahlad Maharaj's life is a little hard to ascertain. We've got some information, but I'm sure there's a lot more. I'm sure somebody lectured on it and I heard him talk about him in a different way. But anyway, we will keep looking and find out. But yeah, Narad Muni's life is really extraordinary. Really amazing life. Okay. Yes, there's a lot in this chapter, Naniben. You're absolutely right. Narad Muni he summarizes basically a lot of philosophy, but he's just given a little taste of it. He hasn't given a lot of detail. So,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Yes, so Prabhuji, one thing I would like to know, to confirm from you if I'm right or wrong. So first, we get this material body. It's on the platform of the material, right? And second, then we get the mind. And third, intelligence. And then fourth is a soul, higher is a soul. And then we get the intelligence, and then we get the mind, and then we get the body, right?
But ultimately, we don't get the soul. We are the soul, right?
Yes. I mean,
consciousness.
Like,
Are you talking about consciousness?
Actually, the mind controls everything in our life, in our daily life, in this material world, right? It's difficult to control the mind. That means that the mind is controlling everything. But it should be like the intelligence controls the mind and the soul controls the intelligence.
Correct.
So in this sense, the soul should be controlling everything.
Correct.
It's the consciousness, right?
Correct.
Right. So it's the highest.
Yeah.
And then second come the soul is highest, and then intelligence, and then mind, and then body, right?
And senses, yeah.
Okay. That's why I wanted to.
That's a correct sequence.
Yes. Okay.
Because ultimately, you're absolutely right. At the moment, we don't even know the distinction between the mind and the soul because
the soul, the mind is controlling everything.
Yeah, and well, the mind is is controlling. The mind is not controlled. That's the problem. And the mind is just doing whatever it wants to do. And
so that's why we should use our intelligence to control the mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. And that we is the soul. Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
That's good analysis. Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Prabhuji,
yes.
Mind, intelligence, and false ego, they are also not to be trusted. In nothing to be trusted.
Yeah.
We can in a sort of our material world, we can say that intelligence can control, but intelligence brings havoc. Intelligent people, they cause a lot of problems as well in this material world.
False intelligence,
false, yeah.
That's very true.
Misguided as well. So only way out of this is spiritualizing our mind, body, and soul. So soul is sort of getting away from the conditioned way of life, and then find solace at the lotus feet, and then we can trust our intelligence, and then we can trust our mind if all used in the services of the Krishna.
Yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to say, never trust the mind, never, and beat the mind, with a shoe, and beat the mind with a stick to control it. The intelligence, you're right. If intelligence is fixed properly, then it's okay. But our intelligence is guided by our material connections, material education, material friends, material relatives. So our intelligence is not focused. And that's what Krishna explained, Narada Muni explains, that our knowledge can be sharpened by the weapon of knowledge, by the sword.
Sword.
Our knowledge can be sharpened by the sword of knowledge. So if we read this knowledge, understand this knowledge, then we've got a better chance of using that intelligence to control the mind. And false ego is a huge issue, because we are thinking we are this body, but actually we can't be this body, because the body is always changing. So again, yeah, you're right. False ego, you can't trust it, because the ego is always thinking, oh, I have done this, I am doing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's very good analysis, Naniben. I liked your analysis.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hardika, we will share this. What we do is every day we post on the group these notes. So please do excuse all the mistakes. I don't usually even correct the mistakes, but I just post them. Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, we can go to the lessons. And I was thinking...
sorry. Sorry. Yes, thank you. That'd be really good. I'd like the the slides.
Yes.
It was really interesting information. So I'm not going to remember it all.
I know. Don't worry. No, am I. No, do we.
It'd be nice to go over it again. So it was really good. I like the way it's broken down. So, yeah.
We do a similar sort of exercise tonight on the 11th chapter as well. And again, we'll share the slides. So, you have access to it on that online Vedic group. It'll be on there.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for joining, and appreciate your feedback. Indulekha Maji, I was thinking next week, maybe
yes, Prabhuji.
Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe Wednesday, you can go through each one in little detail lesson. Yeah. Because I think Monday we'll have the questions and answers. Tuesday, Madhusudan Prabhu will do instructions. You can do Wednesday. If that's
anytime, Prabhuji.
Okay. So you can. Yeah, go for it.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Lesson from Canto 7. Chapter 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead exists within the heart of every living being and is prepared to give bhakti yoga to everyone, but one must be capable of receiving it. Chapter 2. Since our consciousness can be changed by spiritual education, we simply have to carry out the order of the Supreme Lord to become free from the influence of the mode of material nature. Chapter 3. After long austerities and penances, one may obtain mystic powers which eventually are vanquished, but the powers obtained by the mercy of the Lord are never vanquished. Chapter 4. By their pious activities, some souls are promoted. Can you hold on, Prabhuji? Somebody is knocking at the door.
Do you want me to carry on?
No, let's just come back.
Okay, yes, sorry, somebody delivered the parcel, that's why I was knocking at the door.
No problem.
I'm sorry. Let's go back. Chapter 3. After long austerities and penances, one may obtain mystic powers, which eventually are vanquished by the powers obtained by the mercy of the Lord. But the mercy obtained by the Lord are never vanquished. Chapter 4. By their pious activities, some souls are promoted to the higher planetary systems, thinking only of enjoyment. But it is stated that there is no peace and prosperity in the free worlds without disturbance. Chapter 5. It doesn't always happen that good parents get perfect children or vice versa. Good and great personalities can appear even in the demoniac families. Similarly, demoniac personalities can take birth in pious families. Chapter 6, as the saying goes, education starts at home. Anyone can start learning from a very tender age, where the brain is like sponge and an empty room ready to absorb and retain any acquired knowledge. Chapter 7, we Way 7. If we perform bhakti yoga in relationship with Lord Shri Krishna, we can immediately acquire knowledge and detachment from the world and be situated on the platform of pure religion. Chapter 8, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Where is it? 8, Prabhuji. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is so kind and merciful that he can appear in any form, anywhere, anytime, and in any circumstance just to protect and to keep the words of his pure devotees. Chapter 9, one doesn't need high educational qualifications or certain age to attain the Lord, who is attainable by anyone at any age through devotional service. Chapter 10, simple living and high thinking is the best way of life because accumulating of too many material possessions get us more entangled in this material world and consequently draw us away from spiritual life. Chapter 11, to create a perfect society, everyone should follow the Varna Ashrama Dharma system and should perform the prescribed duties faithfully, then we are sure to be on the righteous spiritual path. Chapter 12, if people follow the 4 spiritual classes since their young ages, they may realize the all-pervading presence of the Supreme Lord. Then it may be possible for them to understand the absolute truth. Chapter 13, the purpose of life of a saintly person is disclosed by his behavior and not by his speech. Although he may be the greatest orator, he always prefers to remain silent. Chapter 14, to purify our strong and sinful inclinations toward material and family attachment, everyone, especially the grihastas, should constantly associate with devotees and listen to the topics of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam.
Right.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So, Madhusudan Prabhu.
Jai Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, this chapter is very long. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. This so many instructions actually, for us to consider in this chapter to lead a sort of a civilized life. The Varna, the ashrams, and then where even amongst the Brahmins there are the categories of Brahmins, even those who have to perform Shrad, how they should perform Shrad, who should they invite. And the interesting thing about how Advaita Acharya, when he offered Shrad, he just offered simple Bhagavad Prasad. And for a Vaishnav, that's what's recommended, that they just, during the Prasad ceremony, just offer charity and also Prasad, which is Bhagavad Prasad, offered to Krishna and just to anyone who is also a Vaishnava. And he just offered it to Haridas Thakur, although he was born of a Mohammedan family. He didn't have to be a Brahmin that he invited, and that's quite distinctly, mentioned in the purports as well, clarifying that as Vaishnavas, we are, they can, don't have to follow the karma kanda kind of, activity or so. But Srila Prabhupada actually in the purport instructs that when one serves the Guru and Krishna, in order to hold the sword of Krishna's instructions, so that's what you were mentioning, how Krishna's instructions are like the sword, and using that as to cut through, just like you have to have a machete or like a sword to cut through the material or thick forest of illusion, as we might call it, but through the forest to go through and carve out a path. We may need that, so for us, Krishna's instructions. So, and then Balaram gives one strength as well. So Balaram is actually Nityananda. It says, Rajendra Nandanaye Sachi Sutta Haile Say Balaram Haile Nitai. So this Bala means like the strength. We need the strength to cut through this illusion as well, using the instructions. And this Balaram, comes with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And both of them are so merciful in this age of Kali that one may very easily take shelter of their lotus feet. So in this Kali Yuga, while we are so just darkness of ignorance, prevail so heavily, and distractions are there. And, our mind is so fickle as well, and all that, to use the strength, to gain the strength. So they come especially to deliver the fallen souls in this age. It says, Papi Tapi Yata Chaili Chila Harinam is Udarila. Udar means like to liberate or to free. Udar. Their weapon is Sankitan, Harinam. Thus one should accept the sword of the knowledge from Krishna, be strong with the mercy of Balaram. So using both, Bala from Balaram, Nitai, and instructions, Lord Chaitanya's instructions. So we should take strength and shelter of Krishna and Balaram and make progress in our bhakti. So that's what's, the others, so many other instructions are there, for different orders. And, some Prabhupada could actually follow those instructions so clearly. He gave his family, he took sannyas, he traveled around the world, he distributed this knowledge, for our benefit, as well. So, and also Guru Maharaj did the same. Ultimately they got their strength, and they took shelter of Krishna. Krishna and Balaram are worshipped in Vrindavan temple. And that's what Prabhupada said, we worship Krishna and Balaram, beautiful deities in Vrindavan. So you take darshan of them and we pray to them. Thank you very much. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Very good. Very, very nice.
Krishna, Dandavat, Nitai Gaura, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol. Yes, Savinda.
Yes, I would like to share something, Prabhu.
Sure.
Yes, in Chaitanya Charitamrita there is one verse like that. Naham vipro na cha narapatir napi vaishyana sudro naham varni cha grihapatir na vanastho yatirva kintu pradyan nikhila paramananda purnamrita dher Gopi Bhartu Pada Kamalayor Das Das Anudas. So the translation says, because this chapter mainly also explain about Varnashra Dharma, but Gauranga Mahaprabhu advises us to transcend Varnashrama Dharma. He says, I am not a Brahmana, I am not a Kshatriya, I am not a Vaishya or a Sudra, nor am I a Brahmachari, a householder, a Vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as a servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. The maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is a cause of universal transcendental bliss. He is always existing with brilliance. In this way, the advice in Srimad Bhagavatam, the details description of Varna Ashram Dharma is mentioned. However, in the conversation with Ramananda Roy, in Prem Dham Deva Stotram, there is a verse, Godavarya Vamatira Ramananda Sambhadam Jnana Karma Mukta Marma Raga Bhakti Sampadam Parati Akanta Krishna Bhava Sevam Nakaram Prema Dhanama Devam Eva Nomi Gaura Sundaram. So in this verse it explains that the spiritual gradation, in spirituality there is gradation, there is lower level than going up to higher level. So in Ramananda Samvad, the conversation between Ramananda Rai and Gauranga Mahaprabhu on the banks of Godavari, in this conversation, it explains the different gradations of spiritual achievement. From lower, it goes on higher and higher. So when the point when Ramananda Rai was explaining about Varna and Ashrama to Gauranga Mahaprabhu in the conversation, Gauranga Mahaprabhu expresses, he says, or aage kaha or here bhai. Means there is some higher than Varnashrama Ashrama. And in this verse, which I quoted this one, Naham Vipro, this means we should transcend even the Varnashrama Ashram level. If you understand, if you identify ourselves, I'm a Brahmana, or this one is Shudra, etc., this is still in the bodily concept of life. We have to transcend this Varnashrama Ashram level. we have to be established in the spiritual identification. Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nita Das 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 Anudas. We have to come to this point. And then in this point, also practice our Krishna consciousness. And everything is polluted in Kali Yuga. There is no proper Brahmana, no Kshatriya, no nothing. It's all a mess. As a verse, another verse explains, Kalo dose vibhajan ekoho mahanguna. The only thing is about Harinam Sankirtana. This way, and practicing Krishna consciousness, then that is the best pathway. Hare Krishna.
No, absolutely agree with that. Only thing is, if everybody can't come to the platform of bhakti and Shuddhanam, then there is this gradual process, but it's very difficult to establish Varnashram in this world. Very, very difficult. But at the same time, sometimes we just have to be mindful that there may be some pockets of society where Varnashram could flourish. In Bharat, there are a few communities where they do practice this system, and for them it works, but it's a gradual process. Whereas what we want to do in Kali Yuga, time is short. Let's really fix our arrow with the bow, the chanting of the holy names, and hit it towards the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and let's hope we make it there quickly. But thank you for sharing those verses, very important verses.
Yes, Prabhu. Nitai Gaur Haribo. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, we can move on to the Nishinga Kavach. So let me stop this.